Welcome back, you guys. So today I'm going to show you a few great time-saving methods to keep your paint dry because nobody loves crusty chunks in their paint. It's a real headache when you're having to pick those things out of the wall all the time. So some of these are so dead simple that you'll be surprised you hadn't thought of them. And I didn't learn them until later on in my career either, some of these. Okay, so I'm just between coats right now. I don't want my brush to start drying out while I'm waiting, you know, because it might be like 2 or 3 hours before I get back to do my next coat. So a really simple way to keep that clean and tidy if you don't feel like washing it right away is to just get a wet rag and put it over your cut can and just kind of make sure that's sealed up pretty well. So you'd be surprised how well that works. I could easily leave this for 4 hours and that brush is not going to be drying out on me. So next, let's get to this one because again, I don't want to have to, you know, like do something with this. I want it to just be like nice. I've said like a few times. So right now what I'm doing is I'm saturating the roller because I just ran it kind of dry on the wall. So I'm getting this nice and saturated. The more saturated it is, the better. And so now to make sure that this doesn't start to dry out over time and crusties don't start to form around the corners of the pan here, the tray, I should say, what I'm gonna use is just a garbage bag. So this is just your big sort of husky, this is one of the ones from Home Depot. Really doesn't matter where it's from, obviously, but these ones are nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna tuck this, if I get it open first, I'm just gonna tuck this away like so, and then I'm gonna very gently just make sure that that's tucked under there. So this one's a great method, you guys. And when I first saw somebody doing it, I thought they were full of it. I didn't believe them that it was gonna work, but this will easily stay wet. If you're gonna leave it, say like 4 hours, you'll come back to it, it'll be exactly the same. It just seems to trap all that humidity in there and it doesn't dry out. I have even successfully left this overnight, no problems. It's still good the next day. But if you start to leave it 2 or 3 days, it will slowly start to get some chunkies forming around the edges and you'll be picking them out when you're rolling the wall. The other risk to doing this is if you're doing it on a busy site and like say a laborer or just anybody else comes along and sees a garbage bag on the ground, they could just pick it up. I've done that once, it really sucks. So you have to keep in mind who's on the job and what's happening because if it's just you, you're probably not gonna make that mistake, but I picked it up because it was somebody else's tray and I thought it was just a garbage bag. Now, once I'm done painting, I'm gonna show you guys a really great way to wrap up the roller. I'm using the same roller that I rolled out this garage 3 months ago. It was still in perfect condition and I'm gonna wrap it up again and use it again the next time I need it. Okay, so I just finished painting my walls and I got a funny little story to tell you guys after I show you how to wrap this up. So that's the last tip, is just how to wrap up your rollers so that you can use them again, even months later if you do a good enough job. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is just make sure your roller is nice and saturated before you put it away. And hopefully you have some painter's plastic here, and you're going to want to cut off enough to be able to wrap this a couple times. So it doesn't need to be too much. I'd say maybe about a foot is usually a decent measurement. Ooh, this is a dull knife blade. I must have used it to apply grip tape to a few skateboards. Yeah, it's just tearing it. Okay, next, you're not gonna need all of this. So I'll usually cut about enough of it to wrap it twice. And this is doubled up too, which doesn't really matter too much. Okay, the next thing, you're gonna wanna wrap it. Make sure you have enough here to kind of tuck the end into the roller. And then next, I use a hammer, as you saw, to just kind of knock the end out to give it a good start before I pull it off. So now I'm neatly folding this here, neatly folding that there, and I can now pull out my roller sleeve without making a big mess. So next, I'll tuck that right in there. And then I'm now gonna fold this back over. And so this part isn't all like super critical exactly how you do it. What's critical is that you try and get it pretty airtight. So now I'm gonna start taping the edges down, and really like what you're going for is just a good seal. You know, so these edges are sealed. This whole side is sealed because it's not even open anywhere. Now I'm gonna get this part sealed from right here. Okay, I'm happy with that. And now comes this part. So my first piece, I'm actually just gonna roll over like this. And I'll really make sure to get every little edge. So even something like this, yep, I'm gonna tape down that loose little edge because we're trying to create as much as possible an airtight seal so that this can be used again. You don't have to put so much tape on like I'm doing right here, but the more you do, the less likely it is to dry out. And just really make sure your edges are all nice and sealed. So right here we have another opening. Making sure that's all really well sealed. So as you can see, there's multiple layers of plastic, and we're just making sure that anywhere the air could get in is totally sealed. So you can use these again up to months later, and if you put it in a fridge, not a freezer, but if you put it in a fridge, it'll be even less likely to dry out. So that is now a nicely wrapped little paint sausage. Okay, you guys, so now it's story time. So you need to make sure that you label whatever it is, because I didn't see this one and I grabbed my other very well wrapped roller, which happened to be drywall primer, not wall paint. So this is a paint and primer that I was planning on using for this wall. And so basically I had a super saturated drywall primer that I then started mashing into regular wall paint. And I noticed that it wasn't painting as nicely as I expected it to. Like the drywall primer I used on this job, I hated that stuff. It was just sticky and slow and took forever to mash in. Like it just wasn't nice stuff. But because I forgot that I had wrapped up 2 rollers, I was just sure that it was wall paint, and my shelves are cluttered so I couldn't find this one. And I didn't figure it out until I came back in once the paint was dry and I could clearly see that it was lighter and had kind of a matte finish. And that slowly from one end of the wall down to the other, it started to become more and more like the wall paint. So it's super duper important that you label these. So this is my Super 2 wall paint. Now I have 2 saturated rollers for this. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. But it was crazy. So what happened, and I don't know if it was from the primer or from the paint and primer, but basically I had the worst case of flashing I've ever seen. And I wish I took some footage, but I was just panicking and super bummed, so I didn't film any of it. But basically I could see the whole patch as this super dark area, and the rest of it had a different sheen. And I could even see some of the tape lifting. Not the tape lifting, but like swelling. So I could actually see the joint. And instead of remembering the advice that one of my old painter friends gave me, which is never watch paint dry, instead I was panicking, and eventually I ended up sanding it, and then I used the same roller to like mash another coat of actual wall paint over top. And it started to look a little better. And then I came in this morning and all the problems were gone. There was no more flashing. There was no more swollen joint. Everything looked good. So I just gave it one more sand, one more coat of wall paint. And I'm gonna wait until the skylights are shining light down to see how it really looks and see if it needs another coat. But basically, I think it's all sorted out. So that really disproves, you know that thing like boring is watching paint dry? So sometimes watching paint dry can be really, really exciting, like in my case. So yeah, don't forget my old friend's advice. Never watch your paint dry. Come back when it's fully dry because it can do some weird stuff. Anyways, you guys, hopefully you got something out of this video. I hope your project's going really well. I hope you're doing even better. And yeah, most importantly, hope you came away from this video with something. So, till the next one, you guys.